Why farming? And it's hard to explain. Because there's a lot of other ways that are easier to make a dollar, you know, and to make a living. Less risky. I grew up, you know, enjoying being on the farm. I also enjoyed doing art work, and that was kind of my high school deal, was doing art. What was interesting for me to draw were things that were related to agriculture, equipment and trucks and things of that nature. And so I guess for whatever reason, that was kind of what made me tick. I've got a nephew, Braden. He's got the farm gene and really enjoys operating equipment and being involved.
Wheat and alfalfa are probably our primary crops. The reason we plant some of our wheat in the fall is because we're able to get a head start in the spring. We don't have to wait for the fields to dry off, so that plant can use a lot of that moisture in the spring and get a big head start, and then we can usually cut our wheat quite a bit earlier, you know, end of July, beginning of August. For the most part, winter has slowed down quite a bit, but we will haul hay in winter time to my cousin Seth and whoever else is buying our hay.
I sell to a lot of high net worth individuals. A lot of the people I'm selling to are going to be doctors, lawyers, CFOs. When COVID hit, there was nothing they wanted more than their families to be safe. They wanted to escape the pandemic. They wanted to be away from people. And they wanted food security. They wanted to know they could get food. And when COVID hit, both of those things were in question. I look at these people that by any metric are going to be highly successful. And what did they want? They wanted a safe place for their families and a safe food supply. They wanted what we had. I think it's so key to be grateful. I am in Western Idaho. I'm not in Chicago, I'm not in LA, I'm not in New York, I'm in Western Idaho. And what a blessing it is to be safe and then to have the opportunity to raise some of our own food. Say, you know what, if crap really hits the fan, we won't starve. There are things to eat, there's things that can be grown, there's space to grow it. That's a big deal. The things that are that basic, security and food, we have them, and have a community around us of just good people.
So we haul hay in winter time. We try to empty our sheds that we filled up before we start first crop.
One of the main things that the family farm produces is hay. And hay is one of those things that can really be a blessing or a curse. The market can swing really hard and fast, and buyers can be available one year and unavailable the next. We're able to provide that market, which is good for the family farm, for my dad and for grandpa and for my cousin Braden. But then on the opposite side of that for us, what a blessing that the farm provides that consistent supply of feed for us. We're beef producers specifically. And so even though it's two separate independent operations, my dad can help me, I can help my dad, and we can work together.
We didn't have any type of a livestock entity associated with our farms. It was just crops. We were raising alfalfa, alfalfa seed, primarily wheat and safflower. Those are our two big crops. But bringing the cattle operation in, it's been able to use waste ground. It's been able to use crop residues that wouldn't have been harvested otherwise. You know, if you have a crop of alfalfa that's not big enough to cut, but you can graze it, you can get some value out of it. That's worked good.
We don't do a whole lot of winter projects, but there are some, you know, with semis when we gotta haul hay or haul grain, we gotta make sure that they work. And so there's times where like we have to change the landing gear on one of them, or we'll blow a tire, you know, hauling hay, fixing up stuff. We'd like to build a better shop so then we can work on more winter projects, because it's pretty unpleasant to work on stuff out in below freezing weather. So that's kind of what we do in the winter. And then after a whole winter of praying for as much snow as we can get, it all starts to melt, and then we start working in the fields.
As winter gives way to spring, there's a certain amount of stress, but then there's a certain amount of anticipation, and there's a lot of hope.
So when the fields get dry enough, we start planting. So we're excited to capture that as well.
I'm able to spend time all day, every day with my wife, with my kids, where I want to be, doing what I want to do, because I've chased it hard, and so did my dad, and so did his dad, and so did his dad. I had that given to me, and I definitely want to be able to pay that forward. So if you go all the way back to great-grandpa Joe, Joseph Christensen, he didn't have a farm handed to him. There wasn't a farm present. He was running the post office, he was running a milk route, he was running a general store, and because he was doing all of those things, he had available capital when not everybody did during the period of the Great Depression, and was able to purchase ground as it became available. There were farms that were lost, and that's one of those things you'd never wish on anybody, but there were a lot of people that plain and simple couldn't make it. Grandpa Joe was willing to do what it took to be in a position to buy.
Mom and Dad were running the store down on the corner. They had the post office, Dad had a milk route, and then they had a small dairy, and they started out that way. And when the opportunity of buying more land, they would purchase the land and be able to start farming it. It was started out, obviously slow, and the farm started to grow from there.
Then I look at Grandpa Verl and all the work that he did. Grandpa Verl farmed right through the 80s. You look at what happened with interest rates getting out of control in that window. He was frugal, he was disciplined. That kept the farm together. And not only together, but then expanded upon it. Grandpa Verl's the one that added the Glendale farm.
I was hauling grain down to Logan. I happened to be in the office down there. One of the workers came in, a young man, and asked if they'd be interested in buying his grandfather's farm. And I just overheard that. I was in the office maybe 5 minutes. I called him up and I asked him, I says, I'd heard through the grapevine that your farm was for sale. And I told him Joe Christensen was my father. And he says, "Oh, Joe Christensen. I like him. He's an honest man. Let's talk." We had a farm bought in 2 days, a livable down payment. Anyway, I would never have gotten the farm had not my father been Joe Christensen. And that's one of the things I've wanted to teach my children. The opportunity comes up that they're not hindered by anything I might have done. I hope I could teach that to my children.
I'm the oldest in Dad's family, and so when I got out of college, Dad was still supporting a fairly large family with the farm, and so he wasn't in a position when he was ready to retire. And so I took a job as a fertilizer and chemical salesman, and then as Dad got older, then we started to lease the farm. And it's been good to be able to work with my dad and father through all these years, and he's been very good to allow me to make mistakes and to do things that were maybe different than what he did.
You think about it though, if I had farmed like my dad did, I'd be out of business. And if Clinton farmed like I did, he'd probably be out of business. I mean, you had to stay with the technology and the changes and what went on.
And I just couldn't be more proud of that legacy. I'm proud of who my dad is, and my grandpa is, and my great-grandpa is, and I'm proud of the work that they put in, which provides some of the opportunities. I still have to work hard, I still have to chase. It's not like I've just arrived or just been handed out. I don't work right on the farm I was raised on. I work in cattle, and it is separate, and it is its own enterprise. But those opportunities are present because of what the generations ahead of me did. And that's something I'm proud to pass on to my kids. The fact the opportunity's there. They may or may not want it. They may or may not jump on it. Who knows? You look at even like my dad, the one that farms with my dad, is his nephew, is my cousin Braden, is the one that's there farming with him. The opportunity's been provided. Braden can farm, or has the option to farm, because my dad's farming.
Probably about 50% of what we planted went to safflower, 30% spring wheat, and then the other 20% was between cover crop, oats, and then also alfalfa that we planted. So last year we planted winter wheat, and then it has to go into what we call dormant, so where it almost goes to sleep. And then in the spring, it'll come back to life once it's warm enough, and it'll have that head start. And then that way you aren't worrying about a muddy field, because that's one thing about planting in the spring. I have been in a couple mud spots, and it's not fun to get that thing unstuck.
So the planting's all done. We got all of the safflower and spring wheat planted and alfalfa, and things look good right now. We've had good rains. We're just starting into irrigation season and watering first crop hay and trying to get all the irrigation systems up and going again. Irrigated acres aren't a large part of the total, but they're the ones that take the most effort and also the ones that yield the most. That's busy. That's been what's taking most of our time right now.
When we first got married, I mean, we didn't have a tractor with a cab on it, and the combines just had a shade. So it's come a long ways, but I really appreciated for our children to have work to do, and we're incorporated into the farm operation and then learning that until something's done, it's not done. It's not like you stop at a certain hour of the day. You have to finish a job. So I have been grateful for that aspect.
This year I hired the co-op to do my spraying. We had a new sprayer to us and it took some repairs, and so typically we like to do most of our own spraying, but we did hire quite a bit done this year.
So we've got this new sprayer, or new to us sprayer. I mean, it's pretty old. We're just working on getting that one set up. We're having to change nozzles over to it, also having to change the control system, GPS setup to it, so then the tractor can communicate to the sprayer.
You're going to spend time fixing it, whether it comes on your time frame or when it comes on when it decides to break, you know. And so if you can be proactive on that, it is a much less stressful process. When you're needing to be going and your sprayer isn't ready to go, then that becomes very stressful. And although paying the co-op to spray my wheat acres cost me a lot of money, at the end of the day, it's worth having it done on a timely manner. That's going to make me back more than trying to save too much, trying to get my sprayer ready to go, you know. So that can be stressful as well, but you're dependent on everything. You're only a small part of the picture there, you know.
A lot of people will say that farmers are the biggest gamblers in the world, and I agree with that. We put thousands and thousands of dollars into our crops, just starting with planting. And then after that, once, hopefully, if the crop will grow, then we go out with a sprayer and we spray for weeds. If we're doing irrigation, we have to pay for water as well. Also, not just water, but paying for labor to go out and move the wheel lines. And that whole crop, through that whole year, it can be destroyed in 10 minutes with a hailstorm. I mean, that's all that it'll take. What my dad calls it, he calls it the white combine will come through. Usually that doesn't happen, but it has happened. And there's been years, a couple of years ago, I think it was 2021, it was a super dry year, and we planted some wheat that we didn't even harvest just because there wasn't anything out there.
When I moved to this area, it was different than where I grew up. I grew up on the Snake River Plain, which you irrigate everything. But when I moved here, and all of a sudden we had all this dry farm, I realized that, oh my goodness, if you don't get a rain at the right time, it's not gonna do as well.
People get hung up on the total amount of rainfall you receive in a year. The thing that's most important is the timing of the rains. In my opinion, if you have good rains in the fall, it'll bring it, and then you have good rains in May and June, you have a phenomenal year, and you may only get 12 inches that year. Whereas you could have a year that's really high as far as a yearly total that may not make for good crops, but it comes at the wrong time.
With irrigation, you water it whenever you want to, whenever you need it. With dry farm, you just put out the seed and pray that hopefully maybe it'll grow a crop someday. I'd say 75% of our acres is dry farm. So rain is super important for us.
You know, it's a little bit like raising your kids. You do your very best to give them the best start you can, and you nurture them, you try and teach them life skills, and then they get to do a lot of life on their own. And the crops are a little bit the same way. You go in, you plant them, you give them the very best environment you can, you feed them the fertilizer, you try and get the weeds out of life, and you do the best you can, and then ultimately that person, that plant, has to rise to its potential or not. Most of the time it grows quite well, but you do have to be able to step back and say, okay, it's on you now. giving you every opportunity to be the best you can. Grow.
Alfalfa is probably the most, as far as headaches go, I guess, because you're over the field so many times. You know, it's 3 different crops, and you have 3 operations. You have to swath it, you have to rake it, you have to bale it, and then you have to haul it. And hay is also difficult because it can be too dry, it can be too wet within a day, and then often you're out in the middle of the night when dews come in and different things, and so that fouls with sleep schedules, and then, like you say, it'll rain or rain just a little bit, or the wind will blow, and there's a lot of pieces that have to kind of fall together to get it to work.
Perfect. During the harvest season, the hours that we work varies intensively. Not very many people on the farm, you know, it's a pretty busy time and there's not much sleep and there's a lot of work, you're up a lot. You know, ever since I could open my eyes, I mean, I rode the corn chopper with my dad. I went to work with my dad every day. I've always enjoyed coming out to the farm when I was young. And when I really actually started working on the farm, I was probably around 12 or 13.
There is nothing better in the world than to be sitting in an air-conditioned combine cab with the combine running well, so you're in the good end of the combine, not in the bad end of the combine, which is the back end. But if the combine's running well, there's nothing better than cutting good wheat. It's really, really fun to watch that come in and have it pour into the bin. Very, very gratifying. On the flip side, when things don't go well, there's nothing worse than cutting poor wheat. If you got a poor crop there and it just has to be done and you have to mow the lawn and clean things up, it's no fun at all.
So my dad, he works a full-time job and he helps out with the farm the most during harvest. Just try to keep the farm rolling. Also just with a lot of repairs on the farm. He knows combines really well, how they run. He also has his own custom harvesting business.
So I'm Kyle Christensen. I'm Braden Christensen's dad, Clendon's younger brother. Yeah, when you've gone to all the effort of prep and the planting and irrigating, everything else, and then pull in the combine and yields better than even what you'd expected or hoped for. It's very satisfying. And you know, with the work that I still do full time, when I do get onto a combine at times, it's nice to be able just to unwind and to be able to just kind of clear your mind, and it's always fun to see the crops rolling in.
In order to be successful doing it, you kind of have to have other things take a back seat. You have to pass up on me. We go into every family event and whatever, you know. Joy's been good, and we try not to schedule too much in August. August is harvest time, you know, it's like a religious holiday almost for the whole month. When everything comes together and you can go through and the combine's running good crop through there and it's pouring into the bin, that's a good day.
I think it's just really important to remember that it is a legacy, and the point of all of our existence, I think, is to become. What are you going to become? What are you leaving behind? What kind of character are we building? It really is who we are becoming as a family, who I'm becoming as not only a mother, but a farmer's wife, who my husband and I become together as a couple. How are we changing and building character that will improve where we live, those we're around, and that really is the most important thing. What are you going to become?
If it weren't for my great-grandpa Joe and my grandpa Verl and Clendon and my dad, I don't know what I'd do. I mean, like, this is what I love to do. I love farming, just part of us, like we have to farm.
You know, when there's a job that needs to be done, we need to stick with it, need to do it. I know that goes back just because that's what we've been taught, and that's the life that we've lived. And with the companies that I'm involved with now, I mean, employees is such a big part of it. Finding good, hardworking people is such a challenge. That is such a blessing to have that legacy growing up on a farm.
Life comes in seasons, you know. I think that's one thing that I've learned being a farmer is everything comes at a trade-off. And so that's something that has, you know, that I think can be applied to life in general. You take advantage of the opportunities where you're at and be looking to the future.
To be frank, there's times when it doesn't work out. We just planted some seeds this fall that a little bit of rain came and it brought some seeds, but not all the seeds. So I'll have to probably replant that, which is hard. And I'm a religious person. I pray. I believe in God. I believe He's watchful, but it doesn't mean that He's not going to let me fail sometimes. It doesn't mean that the crop is always going to be wonderful or that we're all going to be one big happy family all the time. Faith just means that I still keep believing that it can turn out, even when it doesn't. I think farmers are some of the most faithful people in the world because they try again.
I look at the hard work and the sacrifices that Joe made as far as, you know, a lot of this was tough work. I look at the machinery that they ran compared to what we're running now. I mean, and he was running the latest and greatest at that time. You know, some of those tractors, they were running almost 24 hours a day, getting everything tilled. They have that good of lights, so sometimes they'd even have to run with flashlights. And they had shields built up on the old tractors that it would direct the heat that would come back, and, you know, that was their heater. So I just look at the legacy of all the hard work and the sweat and the tears that they did, and it's treated us well, and hopefully we can continue that.
I didn't even know how to drive a standard transmission.
That was an experience trying to teach her in a parking lot down in Logan how to drive my car.
Yes, and
Kinda
to
scared me.
bring it home. Anyway, I did get it up here safe, but yes, I've learned a lot, and then we did have a large family. That's where I feel a lot of accomplishment because they're good people and feel like we've contributed to the world.
The thing I like most about agriculture is it keeps us grounded to what it takes to exist as humans, you know, because we can get along with a lot of different things that we enjoy, but we can't get along without food. But being tied to agriculture, well, it's helped me to see a vision of what it takes to feed people, and we're only one piece in that puzzle. It's a big puzzle. The importance of energy, the importance of good roads and transportation, it keeps you grounded in what it really takes to bring things to the grocery store. It's not magic. It's a lot of different steps. And the general populace loses sight of that easily because they're not involved. They don't see the pieces of it. And I don't see all of the pieces, but yeah, I'm interested. I've got a son that's going to be a high school teacher. I've got a son that's going to be a nurse. You've got one that works in construction, then one that's involved in agriculture, and then, you know, who knows for sure just what Tage will end up doing. But as they go out into the world, hopefully they don't lose that grounding and that tie to what really makes the world go round and makes humanity possible and moves things forward.
It's an undescribable feeling, starting from planting when you spend all the hours of putting the seed into the ground, spraying it, maintaining the crop, looking at what it needs, and also just praying that it'll rain so then it does grow, to harvest is just, it's an undescribable feeling. It's just such a big accomplishment. And then also knowing like what the purpose it is, it's to, you know, feed the whole world. I don't think I could be any prouder than to, you know, help feed the world.